Everybody, and welcome to the Millennial Revolt, an independent political talk show that seeks to bring a different narrative than the stale one we have going on right now in the mainstream media. So today we are going to be talking about France. We're going to be talking about the riots that have been going on all throughout France. We're going to be talking about Marine Le Pen, and we're also going to be talking about what these riots, the implications going to have for the upcoming elections, where Marine Le Pen is currently leading in the polls. So there's so much to talk about. There's so much we have to get into. So let's just jump right into it. The streets of Paris has been gripped by a series of protests since a police officer was charged with anally raping a 22-year-old man during an arrest earlier in the month. Protesters against police brutality have taken to the streets of the city almost every night since, with some overstepping the mark from peaceful protests to violent rioters. And I think it's important that we make this distinction because we see this sort of situation in the United States where people are saying these people are peaceful protests, even when we all can blatantly see in certain cases, like in UC Berkeley, or when people were rioting in Ferguson, or when they were rioting in Chicago, they were saying that these were protests against police brutality, when it clearly wasn't. When you start destroying property, when you start burning cars, when you start assaulting people, that steps over the line to a violent riot. Videos have emerged on the web showing that cars have been set on fire, buildings have been attacked, and police cars are damn near speeding away from angry crowds because they don't want to deal with it. Now, South Korean tourists have also been attacked, and now the South Korean embassy in Paris is warning their visitors to avoid certain areas in the French capital. This is going to hurt French tourism. Besides the terrible terrorist attacks that have hit France only in the span of a couple of months, now you have these violent riots breaking out. Youth unemployment is extremely high. The current government is extremely unpopular. They were also trying to ram through some changes to their labor laws, which didn't sit well with a lot of the population. So there's a lot of things going on in France. The victim, known only as Theo, required emergency hospital treatment due to his injuries sustained in the horrific assault. Now, his sister has called on protesters to remain peaceful, stating that the family wants justice, not incidents. Paris hasn't been the only city that has been engulfed in these violent protests, these riots. The surrounding suburbs near Paris have also been affected. Now, the protests have started 2 weeks ago. Currently, the demonstrators have used fireworks, they've burned cars, they've shattered shop windows, and after several nights of unrest in the suburbs, they have moved on to central Paris. About 254 people have been arrested since the protests started on February 4th. One of the police officers was charged with rape and 3 others with aggravated assault. The case is currently under investigation. Now, while all of these riots are happening in Paris as well as the surrounding suburbs, this just happens to coincide with the political tensions as the French presidential campaigns kick off. Now, Marine Le Pen, who is the leader of Front National, is widely expected to reach the second round of the elections. She has accused the political establishment of neglecting the suburban areas of Paris. She said, "All this is the result of complacency in the French society, which is the fault of politicians who have governed us for years." Marine has also slammed the French government, claiming that it has been paralyzed in the face of its ongoing silence and inaction given the protests and the violence that has erupted. She said that the forces of order are targeted by bands of scoundrels. She said, as she noted, nothing has so far dissuaded the Roman gangs from continuing to commit acts of violence. Calling the situation a shame for France on the international stage, she said that the government is silent, a silence that reflects both its cowardice and its impotence. Marine has also slammed the Interior Minister Bruno Le Roux, saying that he obviously runs away from his responsibilities. She did not spare the conservative Republicans whose current presidential candidate, François Fillon, is embroiled in a scandal saying that they were responsible for reduction in the number of police and gerrymandering. We recall that our country is in a state of emergency. The Front National leader said, "What good is it if the government refuses to use the means at its disposal to maintain public order and enforce the authority of the state?" She concluded by saying, "Security is not a privilege, but a fundamental right that must be restored to all the French people." And that is correct. This is the sort of situation that gets these so-called populist movements into power. Now, when you have Francois Hollande and his socialist government not doing anything to obviously put a stop to these violence, remaining silent, the authority of the state seems to be paralyzed. The police are running away. There are no-go zones popping up all around France, just like in Sweden, just like in Belgium. This is a problem, and people wonder why there is a nationalistic movement that is growing in Europe because of government inaction by a lot of these left-leaning governments who don't want to address what the problem is, who don't want to name what it is. And unfortunately, if they keep being silent, they're always going to continue to have these issues. You know, I truly feel bad for the French people. I feel bad for France as a country. It's a beautiful country, and Paris is a beautiful city that has just turned into an open-air migrant camp. You know, France has a 10% Muslim population, and they accept a lot of migrants and they accept a lot of refugees into their country who have not assimilated. In some of the videos of these riots, you can see people as they are burning things screaming Allah Akbar. You know, this is unacceptable, and there's a reason why there is such a backlash against immigration in a lot of these countries, because there is no sort of assimilation. And the problem is that the French authorities haven't actually investigated these migrants' claims. Take the migrant in, call him in for questioning, take his evidence and forensic evidence, present it to the public, and give a press statement and let people know what's going on. When you have French police and the German police do this too, you can read it in all of these articles. They spend more time trying to deny the fact that any of these events happen than actually investigating the claims made by migrants, because they don't want to seem racist, or they don't want to seem bigoted, or they don't want to seem Islamophobic. You have to integrate these people into the society. They have to become French people. If they are going to be treated as a special class where they can't be talked about, criticized, investigated, then you're going to continue to have these problems. And unless you get this under control, France is going to go to hell. It's going to become a lawless country. You see this breaking out all over Europe, and unless it's properly addressed, this problem is going to continue to break out into every single country. Sweden is lawless. Sweden is the rape capital of Europe. There are multiple no-go zones in Sweden, and you see the same thing that's happening in France. Unfortunately, the media in a lot of European countries does the same thing that our media in the US does. It glosses over what's actually going on. It only reports half-truths, and anyone who questions or calls out the fact that what they're saying is lies is either labeled bigoted or they're labeled as racist, and they are shut down. And the thing about Europe is Europe doesn't have a First Amendment like we do. There is virtually no freedom of speech. You see what they're doing in Germany. Angela Merkel and her government are trying to censor Facebook so people can't talk about the crimes that are being committed by migrants and refugees in Germany. So I will definitely keep you guys updated as more information comes out about these protests and what's going on in Paris, because there seems to be a media blackout. BBC, NBC, ABC, nobody's really talking about any of this, and it's just very strange as to why not. So I'm in the Millennial Revolt. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye.